So I'm Jess Gregg. I'm here at UCLA with my colleague Rachel. I work at our, we have a STEM teaching center here, so I work with faculty helping them design their courses. And I'm also part of a project called Aspire, which is led by CIRTL as well as the APLU, the Association for Public Land Grant Universities. And what the goal of that is to do is to diversify faculty in STEM nationwide and really help people explore and get interested in careers in teaching, both at 2- and 4-year institutions. And so this is part of that initiative, just to get people more aware about the different career options and encourage people to think about teaching at a community college, because so many students in our country have their very first experiences in STEM in the community college setting. I think it's more than half of the country, and it's really important that they have instructors that are from diverse backgrounds, that are passionate about what they're doing and also passionate about inclusive teaching. And so I really want to, let Rachel introduce herself and then we'll do our panel.
So I'm Rachel Kennison. Like Jess, I work in our STEM Center for Teaching and Learning here. I run the CIRTL programming at UCLA. I also kind of got my start after I got my PhD in teaching at a community college at Santa Monica College, which I still do. I teach a career counseling course there, which I also teach at UCLA for undergrads and for grad students and postdocs.
And I want to thank our panelists so much for volunteering their time today to share their experiences at the community college where they teach. We have Sasha Moore, Vicki Romano, and Kristen Bird. So I'll let each of you introduce yourselves. Sasha, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm Sasha Moore. I use she, her, hers, and I have 2 distinct jobs that have married really well. One of them is that I'm a full-time faculty member in the English department at Golden West College, which is in Huntington Beach. I'm sorry for all of you who are so cold right now. I won't tell you what the temperature is here. I'll just tell you to come visit if you can. And my other role is I am the district coordinator of equity, inclusion, and compliance for all 3 of the colleges in my district, the Coast Community College District in Southern California.
Thank you, Sasha. Vicki, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Vicki Romano. I'm an instructional designer, which at Kirkwood Community College in Iowa means I'm in charge of all faculty development and also staff development. In addition to that, I teach at Kirkwood, and then I also teach at Eastern Oregon University, and in addition Prescott College in Arizona, so I do some face-to-face and online instruction as well.
Thanks, Vicki. And Kristen?
Hi, I am a professor of biology at Tarrant County College, which is in Fort Worth, Texas. It's kind of warm here today, too, so I'm sorry it's cold. I'm from Pennsylvania, so I get it. I'm glad I moved to Texas. Anyway, I teach biology, and I'm also the department co-chair, so I do a lot of hiring. So on that side, I'll be pretty knowledgeable about what we're looking for.
Great. Okay, we're gonna dig right into the questions. We have a couple of questions planned, and then we'll have time at the end. So as we're going through for the participants, if there's something you'd really like us to get to, feel free to put that in the chat, and we'll make a note to make sure that we address the questions at the end. So Rachel's going to kick us off here with the first question.
So we'd love to hear from each of you a story of your career path. So what led you to your current position at a community college?
You want us to go in order?
With Sasha?
Sure, okay. So my career path was probably like many of yours. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I was a community college student, and I was a first-generation community college student. And I was only there because my parents said I couldn't live rent-free unless I was doing something valuable with my time. So that was how I lived at home for free for a little while, and I really didn't see myself having a future in academic work at all. I didn't even see myself as a college student, and so I had a a faculty member actually nominate me for the English Department Scholarship when I was in my second semester of community college. And that completely changed the way that I saw myself as someone who had the potential to do work at that level. And it made me really realize the kind of impact that she had on me, and immediately recognized that I wanted to have that kind of impact on future students too. And so it was all uphill from there.
Great, thank you. Vicki, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I actually started my career in K-12, so I taught first and second grade in middle school for several years, and then I came to higher ed actually through a liberal arts institution, and I started doing work in instructional support there, and then also teaching methods and also supervising student teachers. Then went to community college for a little bit as a designer as courses started to go online, and then ended up here at Kirkwood. My daughter came here to live in Cedar Rapids after college, kind of wish she picked a warmer spot, and ended up getting married, and I have a granddaughter here. So I got into Kirkwood. Actually, our new president was actually one of my references, and so there was an instructional designer position open, which is actually more faculty development and staff development the way it is at Kirkwood, and then I picked up courses to teach there as well. So I've been kind of roundabout and hit a few different institutions before I landed here.
Great. Thank you. I think that's not uncommon experience. Kristen.
Okay, so I kind of went the traditional path. I went to Penn State for undergrad. I grew up in Pennsylvania. Came from my family are educators. My dad was a biology professor. My mom was a teacher. Kind of was interested in biology my whole life, and so just that was my major. Couldn't decide whether I wanted to go to graduate school or medical school. Graduate school paid, so I went to graduate school. Ended up getting into a good one. I got into Johns Hopkins. I had pretty good grades. And started doing research and enjoyed that process. Got to teach a little bit, really enjoyed the teaching part, although I'll tell you later why I like my community college students better than pre-med Johns Hopkins students. But and then I did a postdoc at UCSF for about 4 years, and during that process I got married and had a child, and kind of realized for me that research and being the kind of mom I wanted to be didn't fit together. So I looked into teaching part-time as a way of maybe being home more but still being in my field. I ended up with a job at a community college in San Francisco, and then worked for a public works program called SF Works. It was training people to work in the biotech industry, kind of at low-level positions, but getting them familiarized with the biological concepts that they needed to know, and just enjoyed it. Teaching it that, getting people interested was really fabulous for me. And then we ended up moving to Texas, and I started teaching at Tarrant County College and haven't looked back. I haven't regretted at all my decision to go into teaching. It was really where my calling was all along, I think.
Thank you. I don't know that I would call that a traditional path, but okay.
Well, I did, well, that's true, maybe not. It's true. I went from kindergarten to PhD in 22 years. Or 27 years, sorry.
Great. Thank you so much, all of you. Okay, so
I'll ask this one. For this one, we want you to share, and this is for each of you again to answer, to share a story of a student that you've had that exemplifies the community college experience on your campus. So really getting at the heart of the students that you're teaching. Let's start with Vicki this time.
Sure. So Kirkwood is Iowa. One of the things we're realizing is our student population is growing in diversity in terms of race and ethnicity. So we're really working hard to grow faculty and staff that well. But I've been fortunate to have a lot of experiences that have helped. So it's hard to pick one. You know, I could go on all day. But one student I had this past fall, first generation. The business class that I was teaching was actually a prerequisite for the medical transcriber certificate. So I had a lot of medical terminology students in my class. And she looked at me one day, because it took her a couple weeks to even just kind of make eye contact and speak in class. And she said, "I think I'm going to drop this class." And I just went, huh. I said, well, let's talk about that. And I walked her over to an advisor. And bad things were going to happen quickly. So it was just so rewarding to know that, yes, she was there for content, and she was in a business class that she thought had nothing to do with where she was, but I was able to just say, okay, you can't just drop a class. Let's get you the information. Let's see what that means for your financial aid. Let's see what that means for your path, what that means for your program. So again, that advising student success piece that's just present always. So she was a success. She ended up completing the class successfully. So it's just those rewarding moments of, who are you, what do you need here, and just gaining that experience for them and just helping them understand how things work.
Great, thank you, Vicki. I think you're really speaking to the role being very holistic and not just teaching the subject matter, but supporting the whole student. How about Sasha?
Okay, so I'm going to echo what Vicki said. This is a very difficult question to answer, because literally every single day I could give you a great example of a community college student who really exemplifies the experience. I'll talk more in a little bit about my experience of just teaching my first class of the semester last night, and I'll just give you some of the questions I was asked, and that alone will show you what a typical day in the life is like. But so I had to identify one story. Again, it's very, very hard to do. I've got about 25 examples written down here literally, but I'll just say it's very common that we have students who are going through really catastrophic circumstances. And so one that happened fairly recently was that I had a student who was not doing well at all, and that was sudden. He had been doing really well all semester. And then about 4 weeks in, he just was totally withdrawn, really quiet, wasn't looking anyone in the eye, anything like that. And so I pulled him aside at the break, and I said, "What's going on? Something's not right here." And he said, "Yeah, I feel really bad because my discussion post didn't come in on time." And I said, "That's not a big deal. We dropped the lowest score, and also what else is going on?" And he said, "Well, I mean, it's probably not a big deal, and I don't even know what I could do about this, but I just started living out of my car a couple of days ago because my parents found out that I'm gay, and they don't like that, and I'm also undocumented, and they're threatening to expose me to the police. And so I'm really not sure how to handle that. So that's why my discussion post is late." And he just kept recircling back to, "And so my discussion post is late." And I'm thinking, but you're living in your car, and your parents are threatening to expose you to the authorities, and they've thrown you out of your house because you have now told them that you are gay. Oh my gosh, there's a lot more happening here. So as you'll hear from all of us, I immediately took him on basically a campus tour of the various resources that are available to him. And he was housing insecure for about 5 more minutes that day, and then he was able to get resources on campus, and we went over to the food pantry so he knew where that was located, and we had several other conversations about local resources that he could access to. So that is not even an extreme example of the kinds of things that we see all of the time. That's just one.
Thank you, Sasha, so much. I do want to acknowledge a comment that's coming up in the chat. I'd like to let Kristen respond to this question as well. I want to hear about her story, and then I can address the question or have the panelists address the question that's coming up about gender diversity in the community college setting. But first, I'd really like to hear Kristen's example of a student story.
Okay, so like the others, Tarrant County College is very diverse. We have students that come from, we have a lot of immigrants, and we have a lot of people who English is not their first language. But the story that I chose to pick kind of exemplifies how community colleges differ from university settings in the sense that the classes are smaller, there's this family attitude, we care, the students feel very comfortable going to their professors to say what both Vicki and Sasha said their students came to them and said. So I had a student who took me for a non-majors biology class. She was a very vocal student, came to my office quite a bit, I gave her the attention that she was seeking. I talked to her about biology and about her life, and she said, I've never had anybody like be that interested in what I had to say. And she just started, as the semester progressed, she started to say, I just love this biology stuff. I think I'm going to change my major. So she came and talked to me about changing her major, and I helped her get a lab assistant position so that she could make some money and get a little bit more biology under her belt before she switched her major. So she finally switched her major. She's in the process of that now. She's applying to transfer. But the part of her story that I really like that she shared with me was she grew up in foster homes. She was never adopted. She ended up out of foster homes, pregnant with her own children who she couldn't support. She was living in a car with them. She put them up for adoption and is trying to get her life back on track. And she came to me and she said, you're one of the first person in my life that believed that I could do this. Because I told her, change your major. This is fabulous. You're good at this. And I think that's what community college professors have, that opportunity to be there for someone who maybe doesn't have that kind of support behind them.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. And I really think that's starting to dig into some of the really diverse student populations that are present at our community colleges, and also some of the challenging issues and barriers that the students are facing. And there's certainly students with similar stories attending four-year institutions as well, but it does seem that the breadth of diversity and the barriers and challenges are very, very present in the settings that you're talking about. So thank you for sharing these stories. I do want to address the question that was in the chat, which is basically asking, thank you Leo for posing this, asking about, acknowledging that we don't have a male-identified panelist today, and want to acknowledge that that is true, and I will take responsibility as the organizer for this, for not just working as hard as I could have to get a more diverse panel. I really want to thank the panelists for their time and volunteering to be here. But I think first of all, I want to say that part of the role of the grant that I spoke about, the Aspire grant, is to diversify the faculty in general across the United States. So there are, clearly I think most people here are aware that there is a lack of diversity for faculty at four-year institutions and at community colleges in terms of representing the diversity of the student body. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge that that is true, and that that the initiative that we are a part of, the Aspire initiative, is working towards that. And the NSF includes initiatives in general. If you want to look up NSF includes, are trying to support outcomes in STEM broadly, and in particularly disparity gaps for students from underrepresented backgrounds. So I want to acknowledge the truth in what you're saying, but it also sounds like there's a question about that the panelists might speak to in terms of the diversity of the faculty at your own campuses. So let me open that up to Vicki, Kristen, Sacha, if any of you want to respond and speak a little bit about the diversity of the faculty body at your community college.
Okay. Well, I'll go first this time. I think I can speak to my own department, which is very female heavy. I think we just hired this year a third male out of 19 faculty members. They're mostly female, and that's in the sciences. So, but I also think that speaks a little bit to, like what I was saying before, it's a very family-friendly kind of position. And so as a mom, for me, that was what I wanted to do. But I think across my whole campus and my district, it would be more even. Male to female ratio would be evened out. It's not necessarily representative of all the disciplines.
Yeah, I'll go next. This is a really important issue to me. I didn't randomly fall into a position for equity, inclusion, and compliance by happenstance. I am really surprised all the time by how heavily weighted certain departments are in terms of gender identification and also in terms of racial and ethnic identification. And so I actually run an internship program for our district that trains future faculty or potential future faculty, specifically who come in with really diverse backgrounds and can bring that in front of the class. And I'd like to share actually a really quick story about that. One of our former interns, who's now a part-time faculty member of ours, has been sharing this story widely recently. She had a student last semester who came up to her and said, you know, I'd like to ask you, are you Vietnamese? And the faculty member said, well, yeah, I am. And she said, you know, I just want to let you know I really struggled, but I wanted to change my major from nursing to English. And my parents, I knew they were going to be really unhappy about it. But I have to tell you, seeing you at the front of the classroom, it tells me that I can do it too. And it's going to tell them the same thing. And I think as much as you may see externally that everyone looks the same or there's a lot of similar representation, it's important for everyone to know that there are really active efforts happening across our colleges to change that. Our students are incredibly diverse, and we know that they respond best when they can see it and then be it. And so I just wanted to add that too.
Yeah, for us here in Eastern Iowa, the student body is diverse and is diversifying quickly, especially the Latino, Latinx population is growing, I believe, the fastest. Again, it's Eastern Iowa. We know that there is a need because our faculty and staff do not represent our student body, and so I know we are working towards that. It's interesting here. I've taught a few different places. So just on a personal perspective, when I tend to think of equity and inclusion, I think first generation. I think in terms of ethnicity, in terms of the populations we are serving in the area and what we have. We also have a large African student population as well. There's some type of relationship in the area with I don't know if it's a church or an employer, but there's many students from the Congo that we've had at our place. So again, we are not there, and we know we want to get there. So it's part of what we try to do, especially as we're working with new faculty and veteran faculty. We try to have discussions. We try to have case studies together because we have people to draw from, but again we don't represent our students in that way. So we've got a long way to go, but at least we do know that there's a long way to go, and we're working to get there. So I'm trying to be honest without being negative. It's just the demographics where we are here.
Can I add one thing? I will say that our student population in the sciences is more female than male. So sometimes that is, right now the way our numbers are is not necessarily a bad thing because we have female students who are seeing female biologists and scientists in front of their classroom. So I do think sometimes, like you were just saying, Vicki, that the numbers don't look like they represent the way they should be. But sometimes for our students, that's okay for right now, for this exact moment in time.
Okay, well, thank you, Leah, for bringing up that question. I'm going to keep us moving because I know there's a lot of things you probably want to know from our panelists. I also am noticing that we are getting the ding every time somebody posts a chat, so I'm going to try to mute our mic. But Shannon, if you could chat us a way for us to shut that off, I can do that so it's not distracting to the panelists. But I think Rachel's going to ask this question.
So this is for you, Sasha. I'm wondering if you could give some advice. What do you know now about teaching at a community college that you wish you had known earlier? So any advice that you would want to share that you wish someone had shared with you?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. One, Leo, I keep deleting the long diatribe that I want to send you about your questions regarding male and female hires. I have so much to say to you, but this is not just our personal webinar. So know that I hear you and I'm reading you, and I want to have a lot to say about that. And we'll try to get to it later, I hope. So Just really quickly, there are a lot of things to know about teaching in the community colleges, and they're all wonderful. I knew this was a good fit for me really early on, again, because of that personal experience I had as a student. And I didn't continue this part with my career path question earlier, but when I got out of graduate school, I immediately started teaching at the college where I had been a student, and I taught there for 2 years in a temporary full-time position and also in part-time positions. And I taught at one other college as a part-timer as well. And then I got a full-time 1-year position at the college where I still teach currently, and then moved into a tenure track position. So I wanted to follow up on that. But what I wish someone had talked to me about very early on in this work is the reality of imposter syndrome. I had no idea what that was or that it was a real thing. I thought only I felt it, and that everybody else felt very much a part of the environment that we were in, and like they belonged, and like academia was for them. And again, especially as a first-generation college student, I immediately was teaching courses that my parents were not actually even able to take, and that was a very unusual feeling at 24 years old. So it's something still I recognize in myself at times, and something that I see a lot in my interns who come in, and especially in my students. And I always remind myself, you know, if I, as a person who identifies as a white woman, am feeling really out of place in an English classroom where almost all of my teachers looked exactly like I did throughout college, then what is that like for everyone else? So I wish someone had talked to me about that earlier on. And those of you who are thinking, I don't really know if I fit there, I don't really know if that's a good thing for me, how will I meld into the environment? It is totally for you. Whoever you are, the more different you feel, the likelier it is that you will do more good in this environment. So I want you to know that, and I wish I had known that earlier too. A couple of other quick things. This job, as you're already hearing from all of us, is so incredibly multifaceted. I didn't think I was just going to go in the classroom and teach. I knew I had too much of a helping nature and need and want to do that, but I didn't realize how many non-academic barriers my students would face. And while that can be really challenging and overwhelming at first, it becomes one of the most rewarding parts of the job, as again, you're already hearing. And the last thing I wanted to say about it is I did not realize that I could have this job for decades and decades and decades and never get bored with it. More than anywhere else, you can absolutely reinvent yourself in this work. I have chaired every committee that we have on our campus by choice, not by force, in case you're scared of that statement. And I've also had these opportunities to do great things district-wide. If I want to work in basic skills, I do that. If I want to be in equity, I do that. If I want to get really involved in writing across the curriculum, I'll do that. So it's really wonderful. You can go into these different areas, but there's also a lot of opportunity for development and growth just based on your own personal interests, which obviously change over the course of your many decades career in a particular college or colleges.
Great, thanks so much for that, Sasha. It sounds like just by reading over the messages in the chat that the concept of imposter syndrome really resonated with a lot of people, and just the sense of teaching in a community college being a very personal experience with very personal connections, and also the sense of reward that you feel in your everyday experience. So thank you so much for that.
So before I move on to the question, if Vicki or Kristen, did you want to add anything to this, or should I go on?
For me, just briefly, especially since part of my role is coaching new faculty, and I say new only because a lot of people adjunct, and then unfortunately the full-time lines are blurring sometimes with that adjunct role. So I just want to talk about that as well. But probably you all know your content, and you know what you're doing, and you're passionate about where you are. And my guess is most of you are very good teachers just by virtue of loving what you do and loving your content. So really, and this is what I took in, especially after teaching for a while, it's okay to take the time to get to know your students. It's okay to set up the content in a way that you're gaining that trust and you're gaining that understanding for students as well. You can do that and teach the content at the same time. It's not exclusive to build your relationship with students. That can be done, I promise you, in a way. So always remember that that's part of what you're going to do as well, and it's supported and it's important. So just you've got so much to offer. Just make sure you're taking that time for you as well to do it in such a holistic way that helps not just you, but your students as well. Because obviously if you're here and you're thinking about what you're doing, you want to be an advocate for those folks who you don't know what their story is yet, but how wonderful to create a place that they can be that who they are through and learn what they want to do.
Can I add a different perspective on that question too? Because I think for me, what I wish someone had said to me was, this is all okay, because I was a research scientist, I was university goal-minded, thinking I was going to be a tenure track grant writing professor at a big university. And when I decided that wasn't for me, that was a really tough decision, because I think sometimes we have an image of what we think is successful in our career path, and I didn't know what a community college was going to look like for me, and it turns out that this is success for me, but nobody told me that, and I feel like almost got a little bit poo-pooed at times. And so if this is something you're interested in, teaching is what you love, don't feel guilty or bad about doing it. Just take that leap, because it is a very rewarding thing to do and to give back. You're still giving back even if you're not doing what that first end goal was for you.
And Jeffrey, in answer to your question, yes. I taught at a distinguished liberal arts institution for a dozen years, and there are many people who I don't really talk to right now because of the career changes that I've made. So yeah, sometimes people do look at it that way, as a plan B or as a way, but I don't find that. And what I'm finding at the community college is a way to make a difference in a lot of ways, in the content, in the research, with students. And yes, there is that attitude there, but I promise you this is a rewarding path to include.
And I promise you that those that are going to the university are going to get the experience they need, but the people that are going to the community college need people who care at the community college to get them through what they need to get through. And so that's where it's rewarding. You're helping the people that might not make it if they didn't have a support system like a community college giving them what they need.
Yeah, I'd like to add really quickly too, just very quickly, because I know we have a lot more, but if you're not getting support for the career that you think you're passionate about, close your ears and go do it. I mean, the reality is this is your life, this is your career path. If you have the passion to work with the kind of students that we're talking about, if you were this kind of student and you want to pay it forward, which was my path, as I mentioned, and I'm sure many of yours I've seen in the discussion, several of yours, you need to go do it. It's very, very fulfilling. It pays well, it's fulfilling, it's very flexible. It gives you all of this great opportunity to do really whatever you want. Lots of flexibility, more than I've ever seen in a university. And beyond that, if you need to develop a new community, you're not going to have a problem doing that. Everyone else who wanted this job and who has this job with you has the same values you do, and they're totally down to work with you, connect with you, support you. It's very much a family and community-oriented environment, so you shouldn't feel like you've got to cut ties with who you thought you were going to be. This is who you are. You're just doing it in a different environment with people who actually support you, and I don't know how that could possibly be a wrong thing in your life. So I just wanted to add that too.
Thank you. So I'm going to actually, I think we've talked a lot about this next question, what do you appreciate most about teaching at a community college? I think I'm, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip it, but we can come back to this topic at the end if there's something that you want to say about it. But I was thinking maybe we could jump to this question for Kristen. What assistance and support did you need to seek out in order to be successful in your position? So this is a little bit more, I think we've been talking a lot about students and the role of working and supporting students. Can you speak a little bit more about how you interact with your colleagues and what kind of support you need from them, need to provide to them?
Sure. So I was a research scientist. I did not take one education class the whole way through all of my education, although I sat in classrooms and had teachers I liked and teachers that were effective, learned how to study, learned how to be successful in my classes in my own way. So for me, when I came into teaching for the first time, I did what felt natural to me, and I think a little bit I just kind of had that natural teacher in me, which probably a lot of you are feeling, and that's why you want to go into it. But I wasn't sure I was doing it right. So for me, what I did right away was I went in and sat in on other colleagues' classes. And I would go to several teaching the same lecture just to see how people did it differently. That was fabulous, and my school was very open and allowed me to do this, and my colleagues were very open. I attended a lot of lectures and pedagogy seminars and conferences and things like that. But I will tell you probably what really helped me the most, and most community colleges offer this, is we have a kind of a first time in college student success course that I got into teaching about just study techniques and time management. And you know, I thought, oh, this will be easy. I can do this. This is not a problem. But what it did was open my eyes to what the challenges my students were really facing on an everyday basis. I wasn't a first-time in college student. I didn't struggle for money when I was going to school, so I didn't have a first-hand feeling on what it was like to be in school with 3 kids and a full-time job and things like that. And that course allowed those kinds of discussions where I wasn't able to do it in a biology class. And I will tell you that was the best experience for me in terms of how I became a better teacher. Because now I weave time management, all that kind of stuff into my biology coursework in a way that they're getting that kind of support plus the content that I want to teach at the same time.
Thank you, Kristen. I see the question about part-time adjunct. I'm going to write that down so that we can add that to our questions when we get to the end. I think that's something people want to hear about. Kristen or Vicki, Sasha or Vicki, do either of you want to add anything to this question?
Sure, because this is how I spend a lot of my day. So we have what's called CIRTL, and that's the Kirkwood Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. And again, our role as instructional designers in CIRTL is to coach faculty and work with faculty. Luckily, both of us that are the instructional designers, we have teaching backgrounds, so and we teach at the institution, so we're able to work with people. We're kind of the good safe place to come, whether you're talking about if you're working on discussions with students or you're looking at planning long-term or short-term planning, if you're looking at how you're going to unpack your outcomes and create your assessments. We are the kind of one-stop shop for that, and we offer workshops and we work one-on-one with folks in coaching situations. The other thing is we had it in K-12, it's the teacher next door, whatever mentor, whoever you have in your department. Sometimes it's a dean, sometimes it's not, because it depends on that evaluation piece. But there should be resources available for you in terms of that pedagogical professional development. If not, you can find a lot of communities online and other spaces as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add too, I think a lot of it comes down to kind of your personality. If you're really good about asking for help, you will obviously be better in whatever career you choose, right? If you're kind of smart about saying, look, I'm really new to this, tell me what's going well. Look for those people, and do this when you're interviewing too, whether you're doing that as a part-time or a full-time faculty member, an incoming one. Look for schools that have new faculty academies. I know that's something that's really important at our college, that for all of our new tenure track faculty, we have a mandatory monthly meeting where they all come in, they build a cohort, and they get all of the information that is not just introductory but helpful to them, and they actually run parts of that in the second semester, so they get to actually have a stake in what their learning process is like. So they know all of the services that are available on campus, all of the processes, all of the common issues, and the kind of heavy hitters from around the campus come in and do talks for them and talk about teaching strategies and things like that. Look for that kind of opportunity. Don't just assume that you need to get hired and so you're going to take whatever job comes your way. Be sure that you're going to have really great professional development available to you, not just externally in other organizations, but also on your own campus. And that's something that you can get involved in too. So we do a lot of, like I said, we have the new faculty academy, but we also have a lot of really thorough mentoring opportunities on our campuses. So So be on the lookout for that. If you don't have something like that that's kind of formalized and static already in your institution, you can also develop those opportunities for yourself. And they should be not just inside of your own department, but you need to have access to people outside of your department so that you can have really frank conversations. You know, if your department blows up into some weird fight on the last day of the semester because everyone is tired and angry and has graded too much and, you know, something sets somebody off, you need to be able to say to your friend in another department, am I out of my mind right now, or is this a ridiculous email? And you want that kind of support. And again, this comes back to the great value of having community on your campus. So there are lots of opportunities for you to be and feel supported. Look for the built-in ones, but also feel free to create those for yourself. Again, you're only working with people who have devoted themselves to helping students. And for them, you are another person who needs and wants their help, which is exactly what they feed into. So don't ever be afraid to ask your fellow colleagues in the community college setting for a helping hand. We're happy to give you 20 when you ask for one. All right.
Great. Thank you, Sasha. The next question, we'll start with you, Sasha. What is something you thought was true about teaching at a community college that ended up not being true? And are there any myths we should debunk? I think one of the things that's coming up in the chat is a question about pay. And I know that it probably depends on where you are in the country. I know here, a lot of times community college teachers get paid more than CIRTL. So yeah, would you like to speak to that question?
Totally. I'll start with the pay issue, which I know is not a formal part of this question, but since some of you are asking about it, and it is really important because we all need to be able to live and do all of that self-care that's required for doing this job well, too. I can't tell you how much yoga I've done in this job. It's a lot, and it's gone up around stressful times. So namaste, everyone. When you are thinking about this job, you shouldn't be concerned about how much you're going to get paid if you're in California. I can tell you that for sure. We have 114 community colleges in our system, and I can tell you now that I am better paid as a full-time community college faculty member than all of my colleagues whom I know are working in lateral positions in universities. And I also don't have PhD debt, and I'm sorry because I know a lot of you in here are like at the end of your PhD programs, but I'm in humanities, so just imagine how much that would cost me. I have a master's degree, and so I don't have the debt from that degree, and I also was able to start doing this work a lot earlier than many of my colleagues who are in university settings. So don't be concerned about that part. If you need to make more money in a community college setting, come to California. It's also warmer here, not to rub that in again. But to go to this actual question, something I thought was true about teaching at the community college that ended up not being true. You know, as a community college student, because I had such severe imposter syndrome at that time, I think I believed that everyone was in the community college because they were underprepared and or unable or lazy. I thought there was something wrong with me and with all of my fellow students. And that again reflects where my headspace was on imposter syndrome when I was in that circumstance, but I can't tell you how untrue that is. The vast majority of the students who are with us are making really wise financial decisions, so they've determined that while they do want to transfer to a four-year university, and many of them have aspirations that they meet and attain of going to graduate school and on and on and on, they're coming to us because they're smart and they want to save money on their GE, or they think they want to be a psych major, but they think they might also want to do horticulture, and so they want to find out which one it is, but for like a couple $100s instead of many, many thousands. So that's the most important thing, that our students are not unprepared or incapable. We do have students who are academically underprepared, but the vast majority of what's going on with our students does come back to those non-academic barriers, that no one has really been able to sit down with them and say, you know, what's going on outside of your life is affecting what's happening with you in this classroom, and we can help you with that. So our approach is very, very the whole student. We now, on the first day of most of our classes, show a very short PowerPoint of all the student services on our campus. We have presentations from those services throughout the semester. If we know that a student is facing a particular issue, then we address that on the first day. I give my students student information forms and have them fill out all kinds of information about themselves on the very first day. go home and I read it all into the wee hours of the night. I make notes about it. I contact them individually. When there are running themes, I bring those back in and we all talk about them. So what I wish that everyone knew coming into this is that the students who are here have goals. They may not be the same goals that you had, or they may not have the same sort of more traditional path that you would expect a student in college to have. Many of them do go in that direction, but not all of them do. And it is really rewarding to be the one or one of the ones to help them figure out how to make those things happen for themselves. So that's what I wish I had known, and I think it is the biggest myth about the students that we teach, that they're lazy or underprepared or incapable, and that is not true of our students at all.
One of our largest revenue, so quick geography lesson, I'm in Cedar Rapids, which is just north of Iowa City, where of course the University of Iowa is. We also have a regional center on the University of Iowa campus. A lot of what we do and a lot of our revenue stream is credit recovery. The numbers of students who are going to the four-year institution and then coming back to Kirkwood is growing. So that was something I didn't realize was happening. I just thought, oh, they come and then they transfer. That's not the population that we're looking at. We also have a large population, again, with credit recovery from the University of Iowa. Again, that's just a large population of students. And also the other piece that we're growing are high school students, so students who are coming from the high school and getting college credit while they're in high school. So there's that as well. I don't know if California or other places have that growing as well, but those are our two growing populations right now.
Yes, we do.
Can I add a little to that question too?
Yeah,
the myth that could be debunked, like I said, I had people poo-poo me like, why are you going to go teach at a community college? And I think the thinking from these people was that, you know, the kind of people that go to community college, you know, aren't good enough, kind of like what Sasha was saying, that they don't feel good enough to get into the university, so that's why they're going to the community college. And my dad was the one that said, you know so much, you're not going to be able to teach what you know. And so there's this idea that it doesn't have the same amount of rigor, that they don't learn what they would learn if they went to a four-year school. And I think that is completely untrue. You have to be creative and you have to figure out ways to get that rigor out there, which to me is just a challenge every day. I love to figure out how to get that person who doesn't have the background there and to be interested and learn it. But I don't think at all the rigor is any lower. And if you go to a school where you feel that that's the way it is, go to another one. I think that in general the idea is keep the rigor up and just be creative in your pedagogy to get the students where you need them to be.
Thank you so much. Before we skip to the next question, this question about adjuncts versus tenure track full-time faculty keeps coming up. So why don't we pause before we go on to the next question and speak to that. I think that the answer to this actually probably varies a lot, but depending on where you are in the country. So in LA, there's a lot of different schools near each other that you can be adjuncting at. We have the term freeway flyers here, and Sasha, I'm sure, can speak to that. But there are other places where that wouldn't make sense because you'd be on the highway for hours and hours before you got to the next college. So let's address that question about maybe about entering into the career if you have to adjunct first, if there's issues around pay, and then degree requirements, that sort of thing. And then also, you know, is there differences for people who just want to be part-time versus full-time, that sort of thing. So any volunteers to respond first?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Everybody is.
All of us.
Sasha, you'll be on deck. Vicki, you want to go first?
Oh, sure. We have it all. A lot of folks, even with the term adjunct, they're still full-time. They're just not on that professional development, pedagogical professional development time. So I spend a lot of my time with adjuncts there's some contractual issues right now that faculty are working out. But so one of the things we're doing is we're developing a faculty roadmap, so we're helping adjuncts in that way. So again, even though it's adjunct, they're still full-time. I know a lot of folks go up and down. We're in what's called the corridor, and so there's just no traffic here like there would be at UCLA. So you could get where you need to go very fast between here or University of Iowa and a couple other community colleges, or even I know a lot of folks drive up to Iowa State. So you have to watch that. And then there's a weird combination between face-to-face and online as well. So that's another arena you might want to explore of what the position is, if it's physically at the school or if there's an online component as well. Ours, there's two different spots between online and face-to-face. So you'll want to navigate whatever institution you're looking at. Ours is still kind of weird that way, but the online and the face-to-face have a very strange combination, but a lot of people are piecing it together. I mean, I've been adjunct in for years, and that's why I'm also a designer. So don't think there aren't other opportunities as well that would bring you to a full-time position.
And can you speak, Vicki, if your goal was to have a full-time tenure track position, do people in your area often have to adjunct first in order to kind of get their foot in the door? Okay.
Yes.
And about how long?
Anywhere from 1 year to, I don't even want to tell you how many because I don't want people to get frustrated, but some people have been adjuncts for decades because there's still benefits and other things that come with that. It's just, you just don't know what's going to happen year to year. So you can piece a lot together. This is kind of the rough thing to talk about, especially if some of us are dealing with some financial right sizing, as they're calling it. Unfortunately, the adjuncting will probably grow before the permanent positions do.
Yeah, and I can add to that too. Are you wanting to move on? We can move on also.
Go ahead. No, let's talk about this.
Okay.
There's a little questions about it.
Yeah. I mean, this is totally dependent upon where you are. I was laughing, Jess, when you said freeway flyer, because we always use that term, but in Southern California, you're not flying on any freeway. You're just sitting all the time, no matter what hour of the day it is. So you might be really close to a college, but it could still take you 2 hours to get 5 miles. It's a great benefit of working here. It's really not. But yeah, you have access to tons of colleges around here. Your pay is extremely different, both based on whether or not you're full-time or you're part-time. If you're full-time, your pay is really great, and you are teaching maybe 4 classes, and you probably have overload and you have other job duties, but it's nowhere near what you're doing as a part-timer. We've got part-time faculty on our campus that are teaching at 3, 4, 5 colleges, teaching 2 or 3 classes per college, just kind of like piecing it all together. And the hard thing about doing that, aside from what is obvious, the time and all of the stuff that goes into even traveling and kind of knowing different policies at different colleges, is that you can't get as involved at any of those colleges. And if you're going to be really strategic about moving from a part-time to a full-time position, and it is true, I think I've met one person in my entire career who moved right into a full-time faculty position at a community college out of graduate school, and that was quite a while ago. It's very standard now that you would have at least 2 or 3 years of part-time work under your belt before you started even applying to full-time positions. And there are exceptions to that. There are people who do it in 1 year. One of my interns just did, so I'm very, very excited about that, but it's uncommon. So you need to know that. And if you have a master's degree, you are eligible to teach in the community colleges. So if you're in a PhD program but you've already had your master's conferred, get out there and start teaching part-time, even if it's 1 class. That, any kind of experience that you can show that you have is going to be beneficial to you. I'll tell you too, there are some really interesting biases. If you come in with university experience as an applicant but you do not have community college experience, that is something that can really be damaging to your application. And so I was posting this in the chat to Katie a couple of minutes ago. Hi, Katie. That you want to be aware that some of these biases exist. So if you do have a PhD or you do have university level teaching, there can be a perception that you're looking at a community college job as a stepping stone, that this is not an end game for you, and we're looking for people who are very devoted to the community college level. So you really need to work hard to show that you have that as your end game. And if you are in a PhD program thinking that you would like to teach at this level, again, the best thing you can do for yourself is pick up 1 or 2 classes. And also, if you're trying to be strategic about going into a full-time position later on, get involved on the campus where you're teaching part-time. You can attend events, and that can happen at all hours of the day and the night. You can sit on one committee. Maybe it meets very infrequently, or there's a lot of online communication that happens versus in-person meetings or something like that. But make yourself a known commodity as a person who is not just an excellent teacher in the classroom, because that is first and foremost, but also who is going to contribute to the community at large. We're also looking for that because it's such a huge part of full-time faculty life at this level.
Thank you so much. Kristen, I want to give you a chance to chime in if you want to add anything to the conversation.
I think I agree with what they're all saying. That to get that teaching experience under your belt is really great. I will talk from a hiring standpoint. We are looking for people who have innovative and creative ways of getting to the not your top students, but to getting to that bulk of students that are maybe not where they need to be, and how you get them there. So one of our efforts really right now is to get our D students to C's and our C students to B's, and so teaching methodologies make a big difference there. So that is something you can consider when you're interviewing and things like that, to say this is how I would handle this kind of situation, because that is something that probably most schools are looking for. I will say in Texas, we are not like what these other states sound like to me. I did teach in San Francisco, but I didn't do it. I just did it in the evenings. But in Texas, you're only allowed to have a certain number of hours. You cannot be full-time, and you do not get benefits. So don't come here if you want benefits, because you can only teach 9, like for our adjuncts, they can only teach 9 hours. That's it. So they're at a disadvantage. Many of our adjuncts have full-time jobs, and they do it as an extra.
There's somebody typing. That might be Sasha or Vicki. That's fine, but maybe
it was me. I'm sorry. I forgot to turn my mic off. It's off.
That's okay. If you mute your mic, then we won't hear it in the background. Okay, so I do want to make the plug here for the next webinar that we're going to have, which is really focusing on getting hired, and that's really going to talk a lot about getting hired as an adjunct, getting hired as a full-time person. But I agree with a lot of the points here about just trying to get some experience even while you're still doing your PhD, whether through an internship or through a virtual adjuncting position where you're teaching a class as a hired employee. Those are options that are available to you, and you can connect with somebody in your region that teaches at a community college and find out from them the best way to go about it, because it is very it depends on where you're located and the culture of the specific institution, and so which is the best way to network and get your foot in the door. But let's try to get through maybe 2 more questions, and then we can open it up to the group. So Rachel, do you want to ask this one to Vicki?
Sure, Vicki. So beyond the classroom, what's your experience with the community college campus culture? So really trying to get a sense of how one can engage in other parts of campus life, if there's an academic senate or other types of experiences that you can have on the campus.
Oh, I might have muted you by accident. I'm sorry. If you push that blue talk button.
Yeah, Vicki, just push the talk on the top there.
Maybe Shannon can help. I think I might have. Let's unmute her here.
Is that it?
Yeah. How about now?
Can you talk?
There we go.
I can't hear you.
How about now?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I've tried to get involved in student clubs and organizations. So far, I've helped the dance squad with one of their fundraisers, and that just happened randomly. The other thing that we have is we have a very strong theater department and arts department, so I've been lucky to be able to go to some of those events as well. And we actually have some sports teams as well, so I've tried to go to those various games too. So I just try to find everything. There's always events that go out, and I just try to always make sure that I'm covering as much as I can. The other group is, since our medical nursing area is also so large, I've tried to be part of the pre-health club and just anything they need to be there for them in terms of communicating with faculty, because I do the weekly faculty newsletter that we put out. So anything that I can do to just give them a little publicity, a little help in doing that, I try to do that. This is a substantially larger institution that I've ever worked at, so I still try to find those same pathways to provide that connection for students through the arts, through clubs, and things like that.
Great, thanks, Vicki. And would anyone else like to add anything?
I'd like to just say most schools have a student services division or department or whatever, and it took me a couple of years to really get to figure out what they had to offer. And now there's actually a much more intentional teaching of faculty what's to offer. But they really have a lot of opportunities for faculty to get involved in terms of clubs and reach out. Like we do a lot of like judging at science fairs at high schools and things like that. And we have a community garden and we have a prairie restoration project. And so it's through that avenue that faculty can really get involved. And that's to interact with student stuff. And then there's the faculty senates and campus committees and things like that that are more focused on salary and benefits or curriculum and instruction, those kinds of things that impact how the future of the faculty really goes. So I'd say, you have to sometimes go out and look for those, go to the faculty association meetings, go to the student services development department and say, where can I fit myself in, and see where they have a need. They do always have a need too.
There's always a need.
Yeah. That's right. There is, and sometimes there's a need for something that you maybe want to do and they haven't thought of yet. So I've done a lot of that. I get bored really easily. Like if I were a dog, I would be in the working group for sure. I've got to have like 45 things going on or I'm out of my mind. Hence why I'm responding to the chat and trying to be a panelist simultaneously and forgetting to turn my mic off. I'm sorry, Craig. So anyway, I think it's really important to be involved on campus. As I was mentioning in one of the previous answers, it's really critical to show that you are an excellent teacher. That's first and foremost what we're looking for. But also, if you're not involved on campus, then we're looking at you with red flags all over the place. We want someone who's going to get in there and do the work with us, and who's going to be innovative and exciting, and who's going to be able to tackle those new issues that come up. In California, we had AB 705 recently passed, and that has really impacted, and you can Google that really quickly. I'm not going to go into what that is, but I will just say it's really impacted the work that happens in English and math and in ESL, and totally restructured the way that we are teaching our classes and even what we're offering, and also how we're marketing, how students are going to get through college. So we love it when people come in and say, hey, there's this new issue or there's this new requirement. I'd really like to take that on, or I'd like to work with a few people to really see what we can do about that on our campus. I love innovation. I love it when people come in and say, I have this idea. It might sound, I don't know, a little out there, but I'm like, tell me more. I want to hear all about it. And it's great. Anyone who's coming in and is excited to do that work outside is wonderful. And so there were some mentions of different clubs that you can be involved in. That's absolutely a great way to interact with students. But also, I know all of our colleges have apps in our district. If you've got an app for your colleges that are local, download it, find out what's going on around there as a community member, not even as someone who's like actually involved on the college campus for official purposes. You can know what the students are saying, you can know what kind of events they're holding, and if there's something that's public, go attend it. It's such a great way to get to know people and to kind of see what the environment is like. So don't ever hold back from getting involved in your local community college, even if you are just a resident in the area.
Thank you so much. Let's transition here to the actual teaching in the classroom, some teaching techniques. I think we've touched on this a little bit with the diversity of the student body and a lot of the challenges that they're facing, but this question I'll ask to Kristen. Maybe you can speak a little bit about how over time you may have had to adjust or change some of your teaching techniques due to the culture of the community college?
I think for me the biggest change that I've made over the years is that I have become flexible within reason. That's what I call it. So of course you have to have deadlines, of course you have to have, you know, due dates and test dates and things like that. But because my students work and have kids and really they're not living in a dorm room and all they're doing is coming to and from the class, I can't not be sensitive to the fact that they have these other things going on in their lives. And so I really communicate this idea of my goal is to get you to be a successful college student in my classroom. So you have to learn the biology, but you have to be able to, you know, manage your time. And so I really tell them I want them to succeed, and that if they need me to work with them to get there, I will do that. And I feel like students appreciate that because they'll say like, well, I have this other professor, and if I'm, you know, 2 seconds late, they close the door and lock it, and I can't get in the room or whatever. I think they really appreciate and don't take advantage of it. That's what I was afraid of at first. I thought, oh, they're going to take advantage of, you know, if I'm not real strict on a due date. I make my due dates, I tell them that's it, and then when they come to me and need some more time or whatever, I'm real flexible with them. So I think that gets them more willing to come to class and to maybe be interested and just stick with the class and not drop it because of that. We have a lot of drops here in biology. And I think probably the other thing that I really have had to change was the workload. I do give a lot of writing. I'm a big proponent of writing. But I've learned some new techniques to do it in different ways. Like I have them write in the classroom, and then I have them take home something that's writing very similarly. So I'm trying to expose them to what they are going to see later on a test or in an assignment during class, so that when they go home and they do it, they're not struggling with how to do it. They're really just embracing the material and writing about the material. So, I do a lot more in-class stuff and then reinforcing it in the homework that I have them take home. So that's just
Thank you. And, Rachel would love that phrase, flexible within reason. How about Vicki or Sasha? Do you want to add anything about your teaching technique?
Yeah, I don't know that it's so much at the community college, but because of the size of the classes that I've had. So I've spent a lot more time, I don't even know how to say this this way, just prepping like crazy. Like I try to have long-term and short-term ready to go in terms of being engaging with students, making sure groups are picked out, making sure articles or other things that we have, activities are ready to go. So I've kind of flipped the classroom a bit. That term flipped has just become a bit cliche, so I don't really want to use it, but what I try to do is have that planning done so that feedback can happen for students in terms of during the class, and then also if it's an email or through the LMS, I try to say something to however many students per day a week. So if it's a class of 35, then I try to spend, you know, students, and again, since I only have one class, so that it's easy to do that. So I'm trying to be prepped so that that feedback can be given. The other thing I've done is I still do have students fill out a card, and then I print their picture from the website manager. So they fill out their card, and then I have the picture, and I go through those cards all the time. So I try to look at where they're coming from, if they've told me anything interesting. I have a lot of students with kids, so I always try to say if, you know, something's going on in the schools, oh, well, you better get this done before you head off to whatever in the school. So again, that feedback, that engagement, anything I can do to prep heavily and get things done so I can have that time to give something a little more personal to each student. It's exhausting and it's a lot of work, but I think in the end it's rewarding to be able to have that. So lots of prep on terms of content and the lessons, and then the time with feedback.
Yeah, I wanted to add to this too. So since I direct equity and inclusion, I didn't, I do a lot more work with teacher training now on that front as well, but I started that work in my own classes, and that's one of the things I love about the two positions I have. I'm able to kind of prove that what I'm saying in the one is actually working because it's working in my classes and in the classes of the teachers that I'm training. So we have in California especially really done a lot of work around equitable and inclusive teaching practices, and that is especially important in the community college because, again, our students, I know I'm a broken record, but it's so true, have all of these non-academic barriers to their success. And so we all are working to make sure that our first day of class, for example, includes like the student information form that I was mentioning earlier. I also do group norms with my classes, so when we're going over the syllabus, the entire syllabus is just me expressing this important tone of caring about the students. You know, I want you to be successful. It's not punitive. A lot of the syllabi that I grew up with, and a lot of them that I still see from various folks teaching in other colleges nearby even, are very much like, you know, if you don't do this at this day, at this time, you're going to fail and it's going to be over, and then your whole life is going to implode. And it's just this very catastrophic approach to failure, and the equitable and inclusive teaching practice is the opposite of that. It's basically about growing and succeeding and having many opportunities to do well, and it is by no means an easy approach to education. People often conflate equity and easiness, and that's not true at all. In fact, I am well known as one of the most rigorous teachers on our campus, and yet I have these policies that are really flexible and account for life circumstances that students may face. So you're going to see that in the policies that I and many others have developed. So things like late work. I think it was really common when I was in college that the response to turning in something late was there is no late policy. The late policy is there's no late work. And now the late policy is like, well, if you turn it in late, you're going to have a penalty, but you can turn something in 6 days late and get minus 60 points on it. And I have students all the time who think that's a great thing. I've got way better retention now because I let students have these different opportunities, and that's beneficial to every student, regardless of the circumstances that they're in. So that's something to think about. I also mentioned intrusive instruction a little while ago. Thank you. I can't remember who posted the link, but someone posted the link for teaching men of color in the community college classroom. That's a really fabulous self-paced course that you can complete within 30 days. You kind of decide when you do the work, but there's a lot of great discussion on intrusive instruction practices there. So all of our courses in the California community college system have online course shelves that are automatically set up, and then you just populate the content. And so I use those as a way to really communicate with my students constantly when they're outside of class, especially since I usually teach once-a-week sections. So if a student misses an assignment, I don't just put a 0 in that category. I put a 0, and then I also say, hey, you know, I see that you missed the first discussion, but you know what, don't worry about that. If you can get back on track next week, you can still be eligible for 100% because we dropped the lowest score. Please let me know if you had any questions, or maybe the system was difficult to work with, or if you're having issues getting your book, I'm here to help. I can't tell you the kind of positive responses I've gotten from those kinds of interactions with students. So I could go on about this. I could do 10 webinars just on this topic, so I'll stop now. But the point is, equitable and inclusive instruction techniques are really, really important now in the area where I'm working, and I love that. I think it's really, really important and so beneficial to students. And my life's easier. I have way fewer conversations about, you know, grappling over grades as a result.
I think the one thing I'd also like to reiterate here is when you're going, whatever it is, you're going into a department and you're going into a space where people have been teaching maybe a while. The one thing that I had to do this fall that drove me absolutely batty is I used the course cell, but the person who was the lead teacher had it set up by the publisher, and it was awful, but I worked around it and I made it work. So there's that way of, yes, we want your enthusiasm and we want you to give the best to the students, but also remember you're part of a department, and that you're not trying to, I'm not trying to stifle anybody, but just be aware of how other people are, and make sure that you're using the resources that you're supposed to use, but use those in a way that's responsible and helpful to students.
Great, thanks. And I think just building on that and echoing some of the comments in the chat box that were spurned, I think, by Raquel, this question of preparedness to do curriculum development, especially when you're coming from a research background. Is that something that you learn on the job? Is, you know, there are particular kinds of training? I know, of course, this is a plug for the CIRTL MOOC and CIRTL training if you have it on your campus. But other than that, is there any advice that any of you have in terms of where to get that kind of training or the experience of just getting there or getting the job and learning on the job?
There are lots of teaching conferences. So like there's the National Association of Biology Teachers Conference. So for me, I was used to going to like fruit fly conferences, right, where everybody talks about fruit flies and not about teaching. And so for me, it was a big shift going to these other conferences, but I learned so much, and I always come back from them just energized and inspired. So I would say that's probably the first thing you should do is find yourself on those conferences and go get yourself energized about it.
Anyone else?
I can make another plug here. I think there are, if you're in Southern California, there are a lot of formal internship programs like the one that Sasha runs, the TIES program. There's also Project Match in the Los Angeles Community College District as a whole. So there are formal internship programs. I'm not sure for our other regions in Iowa and Texas if there are formal internship programs that currently exist that students can take advantage of to get some experience. But I also want to say that in all of the community college faculty that I've met and talked to, there is a lot of openness to having somebody come and shadow your class or sit in on your class, maybe even guest lecture with support. Can you speak a little bit to how some of our, in particular, our postdocs who are here in our audience that have primarily research experience, but now they want to maybe think about this career, what are some steps that they can do to interact with the community college faculty and get a little experience?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm biased toward this question for sure, but an internship program is a great way to go. So, again, because I run one, so I can tell you from firsthand experience. You know, these jobs are really, really, really competitive, very competitive, especially the full-time positions. Some of the part-time ones are too, and so it's a great way to get experience before you're actually allowed to be teaching your own class. It's a really great opportunity to you know, see what the entire environment is like. And especially, you know, it's one thing, if you don't have an internship nearby, I think Jeff has a really good point. Just reach out to the local people who are working in departments that are near you and ask, you know, hey, can I take you to coffee, or can I stop by your office for an hour and just ask you what the job is like? I'd love to know from your perspective, from the inside, what it is to work with these students, what some of the challenging parts are for you, because those exist too. There are very few, but they do exist, and more for some people than others. And also, you know, why would I be good at this, or what should I be looking for? What are some things that would tell me if I would like to do this in the future? But you need to get that teaching experience as soon as you can. I was mentioning this in the chat. There are actually some biases against folks, and I mentioned this here too, who do have PhDs or who are coming in with university experience and not really an understanding of what we are often referring to as our students here in the community college. So the more access you can get to that, and the more you can get familiar with the language that's being used around that, the better that is for you. Because the worst thing you can do is come into an interview and be using buzzwords and not really know what they mean. You want to be able to use actual examples from your own education, even when you were a student, of when things could have gone differently for you if you had known fill in the blank, or if your teacher had approached you in this other way and how you would like to do that with your students. You can absolutely speak in hypotheticals, what I will do, what I would do, what I would like to do, and be totally seriously considered for a position if you're very new to the circuit, if you have no teaching experience. But if you come in and just say, well, what I've seen in my research experience in my university lecture is this, that's not going to translate well. So you do want to get into those classrooms as soon as you can.
I know we just recently got a grant. We partnered up with a local university, and we have a grant where postdocs are coming and doing guest lectureships and getting little stipends for doing that. So I think, I wasn't the lead person on this, I kind of came into it later, but I think the university contacted us. So, you know, contact a community college around you and just say, would you be interested in this? And they're going to say, absolutely, probably. And so you might even get to write a grant out of it and get something fun for it.
I know in Iowa we're starting that as well, and the person who was heading it has left, and so I'm not sure where we are, but I know last spring, a lot of students from Iowa State came to Kirkwood and toured, and we gave them, they came to our area and we talked a little bit, and then they met and went with faculty. So I think the opportunities are there. You just have to look just a little bit to find them and to jump into them.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. We have about 10 minutes left here. So I'm going to just remind all of our 70 remaining audience members that we have on February 28th at the same time getting hired at a community college. So that's really going to go into the application process, interviewing, a lot of what we started to touch on today, but at a deeper level. And then also on April 11th will be understanding diversity and inclusive teaching in the community college setting. Really, important to know, applicable to teaching at the community college and probably more generally. But also, if you are thinking about this career, that's another opportunity to really hear from faculty about the things you need to know in order to be prepared to speak to this in interviews and to be prepared to teach in the community college setting. So we hope that you'll be able to attend those. And then also this one on the April 22nd is specifically about faculty advising. This is not a panel style, but a more a workshop style, so that you'll get a little bit of training on faculty advising. So I want to thank our panelists so much. We have about 7 minutes left, so anyone who has some last-minute questions that we didn't address, feel free to put those in the chat. And Shannon also has put a survey there. We would really love to get your feedback on today's workshop. And you'll also be receiving one after the series is over. So in April, hopefully you'll attend more events and can just give us feedback on the series as a whole. So go ahead, and if you have any last-minute questions here for our panelists, we would love to answer them.
Can I address one that I see here about when you have students that don't have internet at home?
Yes.
So that is an ongoing issue where I am as well. So, I always tell them about the resources on campus. Our library is open late. We have a science learning center, all those things. But if a student really comes to me and says, I really struggle in this way, I will give them some other assignment. So that's that whole flexible within reason. And I've actually started at the beginning of the semester saying, if internet's something you struggle with, come see me. And so that's where I have that one-on-one, and I'll walk them to the library and show them where the computer learning center is. And if they say, well, but I've got kids, I can't come here late at night, that's where I do that extra little assignment just for them. So I think you just have to work around that on a student case-by-case basis.
McDonald's has really good internet if anybody's near a McDonald's. There are some places in the community besides the public library that have some good services. Ours was the gas station for some random reason, so I had students there in the parking lot turning things in when they had to. But sorry for my dog's tail there. It's minus 24 degrees here, so the dogs are still confused of why I'm at home. So yeah, there are establishments around that do have internet as well, but I will do the same thing. I'll just figure out a different way to take the assignment.
There's a question about adjuncting online. Can anybody speak to experiences, or if someone's interested in trying that? Is that helpful if you only have experience online for applying for jobs, or is that a great way to get your foot in the door? What are your thoughts on that?
I think limit yourself. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. If you teach A&P, anatomy and physiology online, there's got to be, we have a job for you probably.
Oh no. I would say in general, if we're hiring someone full-time, unless your goal is just to teach online, we want you to have face-to-face experience, just coming from my perspective. It's okay to have some of that, but you also need some face-to-face experience, especially in the sciences. It's really hard to teach the sciences online.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, across the board, I don't think you're going to find many folks who want to hire you for a full-time position where you're just online. And if you come in saying, I really would like to be exclusively online, you're sending a message that you don't want to be involved in the campus activities, which is really problematic. So I would definitely, having online experience is a huge benefit to you, so you shouldn't look at that as a negative, but only online experience is not a good thing. So I would definitely get in front of the students face-to-face as soon as you can. It's really important that you are tech savvy to some degree. You need to be able to communicate with your students effectively online. You need to be able to work with your course shell, things like that. But yeah, not only that, I would say.
Okay, and there's a question about if you still want to do research, can you do both at the community college? The question is it a zero-sum choice between teaching at a community college and continuing to do research? Can somebody balance both?
Is this someone coming from the sciences?
Sorry, how about
do research science, or do you want to, like, because you can publish in pedagogy on how to teach science. That's something that you can do very easily. To do the actual lab work, most community colleges don't have the facilities. They don't have, extra TAC polymerase and PCR machines sitting around for you to use. So you'd have to partner up with a local university to do that research. I just know we had some biologists on the panel, on the people in the chat.
For us, it's not a priority in terms of promotion or anything like that. It's a piece, but your teaching and your community involvement do weigh a little bit heavier than research. It's not that you can't do it. It's just not. It doesn't weigh as heavily in those decisions where we are.
Yeah, same. I would say if it's something that you're interested in doing, you can absolutely make it happen. And again, if you have a full-time position in a community college, you're going to have a lot of flexibility in your schedule. And so we definitely have people who are just teaching night classes and have made their schedule that way. So they actually are doing that full-time, but they're working part-time in a lab or they're doing research or whatever during the day, and they're very flexible in the way that they're working. My brother is actually a chemist, and he works full-time at a community college in Los Angeles, about 30 miles from where I live and teach. So I know he does this. He was at Berkeley, and now he's down here. So he's had that experience and has really enjoyed that thoroughly.